My journey to the stage and my evolution as a Nayslayer began with this special couple right here. Excuse me? This special person right here. We get? Okay. Began with this special couple right here. My father, Henry Miranda, and my mother, Patricia Slattery Walsh. As you could guess by their names, my father was Cuban and my mother is Irish. And you might think that skin that's getting a sunburn right now and hair of this texture would be challenging enough, but not so. I was also the youngest of four. Actually, I achieved that very rare position in Roman Catholic families. I was the surprise. My father was 40, my mother was almost there herself. I'm sure they had given away all of their baby paraphernalia. Their youngest was 8, the oldest was 13. Well, surprise, it's a Nayslayer. Nayslayer is a nickname that my team members at my office gave me recently when I created a typo doing a PowerPoint presentation. Come to find out, it's an actual word. It's a person who is capable of completely obliterating doubts. And as my sisters love to tease me about, they love to tease me about many things, those two blondes, they remind me that I completely obliterated any doubts that my mother could still get pregnant at 39. But I was totally okay with my birth order. My parents weren't 20 or 30-something parents. They were 40-something parents. They really knew themselves. And as a result, they were both mentors and parents. I had wonderful dinners, often alone at the table with my father, a potato chip salesman, who instilled in me an absolutely fearless understanding of marketing, relationships, and most important, sales. We were very close, my father and I, pretty much clones of each other, so it had to be really difficult for him to witness what would happen to me in my sophomore year at College. UConn, excuse me. This is College. This was a self-portrait, well before there were selfies. About a month after I took this picture, I entered this intersection in my hometown. I had a flashing yellow. The other driver had a flashing red, except he was drunk, and he couldn't have cared less what any traffic light had to say. I don't remember much about the accident, but I remember the flames painted on his Trans Am, I think. And he pushed me into a telephone pole, utility pole at that intersection. What followed next was a series of surgeries and procedures that took away my perfect orthodontic smile at the time, and also took away my ability to continue college. And just when I thought that we were done with the medical procedures, flashing ambulance lights arrived to take away another member of my family, my brother Chris. Everyone in my household dealt with Chris's death in a different way. I'll share that with you in a moment. But actually, I need to tell you a little bit about the relationship between Chris and myself, beginning with my name. My full name is Maria Christina Miranda. How's that for Irish Catholic, right? My mother chose that name, named after a hotel in Mexico City, which is a whole other story, not for today. But she chose that name because, along with my surprise, we also had the surprise of my brother being diagnosed with epilepsy while Mom was expecting me. And it gave him something to focus on, the bond between youngest sibling and himself. From the moment I was born, my mother and Chris fought the good fight against a disease that would rob him of control of his body and often his pride, all the way through to a master's degree program at Harvard before the medications started not to work, and hope was replaced with alcoholism and depression. And eventually, all three of his illnesses took his life, and he passed away in Dad's arms. As I said, we all dealt with that differently. Mom played Beatles albums over and over again. Dad worked longer hours. He wasn't home very much. And my sisters, who were much older, were away from the homestead. So what did I do? I did what any 19-year-old would do who lost a close member of her family. I eloped. Surprise! I married my very first boyfriend, began to rent an apartment above my parents', and I started working at a label factory. How many of you have ever seen a label warning you not to operate heavy equipment while on that medication? I created that graphic when I was 19, 20 years old. But that wasn't the only thing that was half asleep. I was no longer in school. I was doing a job that didn't challenge me at all. And I was on a path that was going to be very limiting unless I did something, but I didn't even know that I was on that path until my mom came out to the driveway one day, and she said just 8 words to me as she gave me a hug. She said, "Your brother lost his life. Don't lose yours." So I got my ass back to school at a local community college and met amazing professors who supported me. It was 1984, and Steve Jobs was teaching us to think differently, and Sally Ride took her trip into space. But it still was a time where I couldn't get a mortgage on my own. If I wanted a job, I better be willing to wear nylons. 4 years later, I graduated with my degree, and I went to interview with peers in my industry, leaders that would later be portrayed in the program Mad Men. And I realized if I wanted a boss I respected, I needed to go to work for myself. Imagine this now. My parents are in their 60s. Just when they thought I was going to be out of the nest and the responsibility of an employer, I tell them, I plan to work for myself in the 3rd bedroom of the apartment. Are you guys okay with that? And they were. If you ask me what inspired me or led me to think I had the ability to do that, it probably wasn't any course in any curriculum listing, but 3 things I give credit to. Dinner 101 with Dad, DUI 201, and an independent study in grief. So in August of '88, when I opened what was going to become the ad agency, as in the only ad agency in this area, my father quit his job selling potato chips to become my courier. Of course he did. And I realized that I had the opportunity to enjoy a life that was denied to my brother. And when that happens to you, little else matters. This is a place of truth and honesty, and I would be dishonest with you if I didn't say I met age and gender discrimination. I still do to this day. But instead of wasting my energy of railing against a system I had no power to change, I realized I knew what good men were, and I looked for individuals like my father and my brother, and I found amazing mentors. People who wanted to invest in me because they wanted to impact the future. And this is what the future looked like. Oops, sorry, I need to go back. I met with my father as he was going to drop off a package for me to the very first significant pitch I was going to make to a client. I said, "Dad, what if I don't get that first client?" And he said to me in his Bronx accent, "Sweetheart, do you have them now?" And I said, "No." And that's when he said to me, "You have absolutely nothing to lose. Get in there." And this is what both my father and those mentors evolved. This is me about 2.5 years, maybe 3 years into business, and I am not holding my own child. I am holding a beautiful baby boy of my very first employee. That child came to work for the first 9 months of his life every day because I didn't feel that my colleagues should have to choose between their creative passion and their children. We went on to do that for another future moms and another future dads. I've been 32 years in business, and as a result, I have had the joy of launching hundreds of careers. I came in one day to that beautiful sign. Can you see it? This company is the only family you will need. With every one of these beautiful individuals, I lost a piece of my heart gladly. I do work that I enjoy every day with people I love even more. But this is a space of honesty, and I want to share with you that there was a price for all of these benefits. I rarely know what it is to have a work week, and I work very, very long hours. I discovered the most useless phrase I have ever heard, ever stated anywhere. It's not personal, it's business. What isn't actually personal? So I found a way to insulate myself, literally, in this process. This went on for a while. As you can imagine, I also outgrew that 19-year-old marriage, and I struggled to be a very non-traditional person seeking to be part of a traditional relationship. So I gave my now 90-year-old mother my old iPhone, and the first thing she does is she texts me another 8 words. The D is for divorced M, not death. She also went on to hack my phone and start looking at the Plenty of Fish profiles of men who wanted to date me, and I'll get to that story in a minute. And if any one of you has any doubts that my nearly 100-year-old mother doesn't use technology, this is us doing a FaceTime together, which, as you can see, applies to any part of her face. So with that motherly nudge and the arrival of my 5th decade, I realized it was time for me to obliterate a new set of doubts. But these weren't external anymore. They were internal. What was my value? How did I feel about myself? And what was I going to do in the future? Place of honesty here. I have no idea how much I weighed at my heaviest. I wouldn't even get on the scale for any of my doctors. But I will admit that I was wearing about a 26, 28 pant and probably about 350 pounds at my heaviest. Everyone begged me, just start. Just take a few steps outside, go for a walk. So one day, I did. I opened the front door, went for a walk in the neighborhood, and a white pickup truck pulled in, rolled down his window, and I thought he was asking for directions to the nearest casino, and instead he shouted out at me, "Lose some weight." So I went right back into the door I had just left, took off those sneakers, put them back in a box, and threw them away. About 2 years after that, I met an amazing woman named Anne. Anne had established a foundation in her late son's name because he committed suicide. She was also a trainer, and I asked her if she would work with me. I was her only training client, and she did. She literally has been by my side the past 5 years, and she and a wonderful diet counselor walked me away from bariatric surgery and to a loss of about 100 pounds so far. But along the way, I would hit a number of plateaus, and about 2 years ago right now, I hit one that was very, very frustrating. So of course I Googled it. What do you do when you hit a plateau? And it talked about seeking a higher elevation. And that's what found me in 3.5-inch stiletto heels doing a runway training class in New York. I wasn't there for a career. I was there for fun and to find a way to obliterate doubts in myself. At the close of the class, the director came up to me and she said, "Will you be in my runway during New York Fashion Week in June?" Right? And I nodded, "Yeah, sure." Right? I'm thinking she's saying that to everybody who attended. So that, just being polite, right? And that really polite moment tuned into a very rude awakening when across my Facebook feed came an announcement that I was going to be her new Silver Fox model at New York Fashion Week in June. Am I allowed to swear? Huh? Holy shit. It was an amazing experience to be on that runway with designers a few steps from Wall Street, and definitely not a size 2. The clothing, the makeup, the I Dream of Jeannie look I borrowed for that evening was a great opportunity. But I think the best experience of all was that it was an experience I shared. I shared it with Andy. Andy, who was there for every practice, every event, and thank God he was there with a pocket knife to cut that top knot out of my hair. Andy, who held hands with me for the very first time in a mystery section of a bookstore where he dared me to lay down the body outlines for coffee, and I will do anything for coffee. Andy, who my mother picked out, hacking my Plenty of Fish profile. I realized at this time in my life that I had actually come full circle to the "you have nothing to lose" advice from my father. I had lost that perfect orthodontic smile, years of my life, both my brother and my father, pieces of my heart, and 100 pounds. But I realized that you are not defined by what you lose, but by what you find. You are not defined by what you lose, but by what you find. So what's next for this Nayslayer? I love witnessing the next generation of my community evolving as they become Nayslayers of their own. You can't see that young woman in the wheelchair there, but that's Carissa. She just won 3 awards from the Connecticut Art Directors Club and was named a 30 under 30. And I love that. This fall, I am going to be returning to that classroom that changed my life at the community college level, and I'm going to be an instructor. Beyond that, I don't really know. I never do, and I don't think I ever will. But I do know that whatever comes next, historically, it's always come beyond the disarray. Thank you.